There it goes.
Okay.
Hello, welcome to Time Enough Podcast. It's the podcast where we take a deep look at the Twilight Zone and beyond. This is Matt here. With me today is co-host of Mission Log, the Orville. She does a lot of improv and I believe has a Twitch stream that people are bragging about. Hello, Jessica Lynn Verdi.
Hello. Thank you for having me. Yes, I'm quite the gaming streamer and improviser and all those things you said.
Although I'm an old man, I don't understand what Twitch is, but one of my regular podcast hosts has his own Twitch stream where he gets up at like 5 or in the morning or something because it's
Wow.
he lives with me in Japan, but he does it for his UK friends. So it's
Yeah, so
Saturday
he
night for
he
them.
has to get the peak hours for him.
Yeah, I told you I was getting up at 8:30 in the morning, but when we have his UK guests, especially when it's daylight savings time, we start at like 6 a.m. podcasting, which is
Wow. That's dedication.
yeah, but the fun part is like I don't remember anything we said during the entire thing. So when it does go online, I'm like, oh, I don't remember anything about this conversation. So it's kind of fun in that way.
So you get to just listen to it as a listener at that point. I get it. I'm at episode 30 of my personal podcast, You Don't Know Nick, and I edit it myself too. And we talk about so much in 1 hour and a half span that I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe we talked about that. Like it's enjoyable to talk to listen back on the things that we talk about. So I get it.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, today's Twilight Zone episode is The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street. Like I mentioned when we were talking about this, I've had several people kind of like not quite take it because it's one of the more iconic ones.
I see. So people are afraid of this one, is what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah. You know, maybe it's too much bonk bonk on the head, but
Bonk,
in a good
bonk
way.
on the head.
Yes. But
Oh God.
in a good way. So
It's such a good episode. I am not intimidated by it, but yeah, I'm ready to get into it.
okay, well, I'll start off with just a touch of trivia with the director and a few of the actors. We have Ron Winston, who directed this episode, along with two later voyages into Twilight Zone. He was a TV pro whose credits include Playhouse 90, several episodes of Hawaii Five-O, and the Big Lebowski's Walter Sobchak would be happy to hear that Ron directed two episodes of the Western Branded. Winston left us quite young in 1973 at the age of 40. Uh,
Hmm.
Claude Atkins is Steve Brand. Atkins was a fellow Georgia boy. That's me being the other one. Who
Gotcha.
appeared in a
Okay,
slew of,
understood. Where are they?
okay.
I'm here now.
Yeah, out of context, it doesn't quite make sense as I'm sitting here
The
reading it.
fellow Georgia boy must be listening to this podcast.
That too, yes. Anyway, he appeared in a slew of westerns on both the big and small screen, as well as notable classics like From Here to Eternity, The Kane Mutiny, Rio Bravo, and Inherit the Wind. But he is burned into Homer Simpson's mind and maybe yours because he was Sheriff Lobo in television's BJ and the Bear. Mrs. Brand was played by Ann Barton. The Brands must have met on the prairie as Barton also made those 50s and 60s Western rounds. She also appeared in two episodes of Leave It to Beaver as Eddie Haskell's rarely seen mother. Although
Oh,
I didn't see much of Leave It to Beaver, so what can I say?
nor did I. That was definitely not. I like watched a lot of Nick at Night, but I Leave It to Beaver was too slow. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, that's probably the case, especially when it's in like a 2 hour block of them on, on Nick or something.
It all looks like it's the same episode. I don't know what's going on, and it's a little too glib. So yeah, I'm sure people love it. Good for them.
Barry Atwater plays Les Goodman and was a notable character actor from the 50s to the 70s. Notable for us geeks is his appearance on TOS Star Trek as Surak, the father of Vulcan philosophy, in the episode The Savage Curtain. He also had some notable stints on Perry Mason and General Hospital. Jack
Wow.
Jack Weston took on the role of Charlie Farnsworth. I'm going to take a wild stab and draw the line to Professor Farnsworth in Futurama.
Sure.
Yeah, Weston himself was generally a comedic actor, though he dipped his toe into drama here and there. Like here. His work was
Right.
his work was strong enough to garner Golden Globe and Tony nominations, but it's his late career appearances in Rad, Dirty Dancing, and Ishtar that caught my attention. I've
That's
seen
fair.
I've seen Ishtar. It's not a bad movie. It's just a maligned movie.
Maligned is a perfect way to put that. I like, and also you're entitled to your opinion, you know?
Yeah, really. Last but not least, Tommy was a demon from hell.
Tommy.
Yeah. There was no information I could find on that actor, but yeah.
I imagine that actor didn't work again. It wasn't like a breakout role for him.
No, but yeah, I betrayed my let's kill Tommy is I guess my part of the mob scene, but
Fair.
okay, Jessica, I just brought up the prologue. If you can give us your read of this one.
Yeah, let's see. Okay. Maple Street, USA. Late summer. A tree-lined little world front. Wait, a tree-lined little world of front porch gliders, barbecues, the laughter of children, and the bell of an ice cream vendor. At the sound of the roar and the flash of light, it will be precisely 6:43 p.m. on Maple Street. This is Maple Street on a late Saturday afternoon. Maple Street is the last Maple Street in the last calm and reflective moment before the monsters came.
Monsters.
Monsters came.
All right. Okay. There we go. Got back to the screen. So yeah, this is one where I've definitely seen it a few times. This is the first one there. The second one they show on a Twilight Zone marathon, I suppose.
Yes, I think I watched it I think the first time I watched it was like in school. Like we're just gonna watch TV today, and they showed this episode or something like that.
Yeah, so it is quite a good one, and not one of the I guess most fun ones, but sometimes the Twilight Zone is not supposed to be fun because the true monster is man. But I am trying to think of real life situations where I might have been in a case where something like this could have happened. I mean, I think we've all been like, weird natural disasters. Maybe when everyone started staying at home in 2020, a few people might have like flirted with this mindset.
You know what? That's actually a perfect illusion because when Rod Serling wraps it up at the end, which not to jump ahead, but basically said that this kind of behavior isn't just relegated to the Twilight Zone. And most people know this episode, but just like to give you a quick refresh, flash of light streaks across the sky, all of the electronics go dead, and people start pointing the fingers as to who might be like the cause of it, who might be a monster, based off of conjecture completely, right? Like one kid has an idea of what it is, and so they start looking for the mole in the society, essentially. It's like every reality TV show ever.
Yeah. I remember maybe it was 2 months ago, Facebook went out for like a whole day or something.
That day was hard. No, okay. People couldn't Instagram. They didn't know what to do.
Yeah. For me though, I was kind of like, oh, free at last. Yes.
It's amazing when you take an objective look at how much you look at your phone, how much. Yeah, I find it interesting too. So if that was when was this shot? The 60s, late 60s?
Probably late 59 or 1960. It was
Got it. Yeah.
date.
So we're in a industrial world, like what, 40 years into the fact, people were used to having power consistently about 40 years up until this point. Is that right?
That's about right.
So it's interesting how quickly we adapt to that as our norm, and then to not have it, our whole way of life is completely shot. And what would we do if like our all of our cell phones just never worked again? I mean, we'd figure it out, but it would be a little bit of pandemonium for sure.
Yeah, there'd be a shock to the system. Something I noticed here, though, is it probably took a good hour before all of these people realized that something was amiss. The sun had to start to go down, and hey, my light's not turning on. Hey, the gas isn't working when I'm trying to work my stove. It took them an hour. Where now it would take us 5 seconds because we'd pick up our phone and there'd be nothing there.
People would be already in the street ripping their hair out. Yeah, you're right. It wouldn't have. It's like electronics are integrated into their life, but no one was actively doing everything at that point. Or they thought if their phone was down, other people's weren't yet. So you're right. And because it was late in the summer, it's late, it's bright outside because it's dark right now because it's winter in California. So they had a couple hours. They definitely did, for sure.
Yeah. There was I was in Japan for the 2011 quake, And
Oh, wow.
yeah, the phone systems were pretty much whacked out for a good day or two because I was working the Kanto plane. If you got your Pokemon areas, right?
Oh, okay, okay. I'm not an avid player anymore, so I don't know
Okay.
that reference.
I know they got the regions. I'm up in the mountains now, but I was working in basically in the plain. My family's in the mountains, and the mountains didn't get shaken so much. So, but
I think
I
that's
got
normal, right? Like because they're already been formed by tectonic plates. I think if I remember Cosmos well enough, that makes sense.
unless the epicenter is here, we do get them, but not like that Fukushima. Well, the Fukushima is a plant, but that the 2011 quake.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
No, I think I got a nice full blast of radiation a day or two after that. My boss was like, "Here, put this towel over your head when you go home."
Whoa.
So that was
There's a lawsuit there waiting to happen. I was it was just the anniversary of it, but I was in Chatsworth, which is adjacent to Northridge in the San Fernando Valley during the 94 earthquake, and we too had no phones. Like, I think rotary phones didn't even work at the time or something. Like, we just couldn't get a hold of anybody. We didn't have power, we didn't have running water. Then FEMA came and it was a whole ordeal for a couple days for sure.
yeah. Although the 2011 quake, when it was like the earthquake ride in my classroom. That was exciting. But this is almost horrible. Besides wanting to get in touch with my family, the thing I was most concerned about was going back to my apartment to see if my guitars had fell over because they were leaning against the wall. It was like, I don't want my nice Gibson guitar to break.
I think that that's reasonable. I think those were the most important thing to you at the time. That's a reasonable fear. I totally get it.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I want to check. Hey, is all the instruments are they fine?
They're very fragile. I think that that's a very reasonable reaction.
My other weird thing, the power is out. I was watching on my laptop battery, but my friend and I,
Mm.
we were sitting around watching the space battleship Yamato anime during
Oh,
that day
I'm not
off.
familiar with that. How
There's an
fun.
anyway. They have the space alarm in the on their battleship. It's like, bloop, bloop. And we were watching and we start hearing again. And it turns out whenever there was an aftershock, the elementary schools were playing the same alarm. So it got really confusing.
Weird. How unusual. Yeah, very disorienting. There's nothing like people in a crisis. I think especially, the studies prove otherwise that when um I assumed when, especially like the pandemic was happening, people were gonna freak out about not having enough supplies because everyone was buying up toilet paper, milk, and bread, and there was nothing when everyone had like the whispers of lockdown. And that kind of panic made me nervous for how other people were going to behave. There were lines outside of gun stores, and that is enough to bring someone else to panic when you start thinking about someone else that's insane running around with a gun. But then you start thinking, well, I could use a gun, So this kind of like trickle down effect of pandemonium and panic made me nervous. But there was a study around, I think, the Cold War to see how societies act in crisis mode. And we actually tend to we galvanize more than we catastrophize. So we reach out to help people. We offer goods if we have them. People tend to band together. We just don't think they do because it's not interesting in TV and film to show it otherwise.
Yeah, I guess the wrench in this particular wheel or whatever would be the fact that in a lot of these situations we know there's just been an earthquake. We know that there's a virus running around where the people on Maple Street have no clue what the disaster even is.
That's the very fair, and you do have the aliens that are like playing them like little monkeys, like, oh, I'll turn on Tommy's house and I'll turn on Charlie's house or whatever. So you're right that like the unknown element, like they they never even left the other that street. So I have a question for you. Pete Van Wood, or who's the guy that they shot? What's his name?
I think that Van something. Yeah, I wrote it down somewhere here.
The older guy, the hammer, very ominous. He goes across over to Floral Street or whatever to see if they have power. What took him so long? Why? What was he doing over there? If he went one street over, why did it take him 3 hours to get back? What do you think was happening over there?
Milk and cookies, maybe. I don't know. Pete Van Horn. There we go.
I have a theory that the aliens held him hostage for a second, like froze him in time or something, or like they made it so he couldn't come back.
Oh yeah, yeah. Because I know a lot. Some of the abductee stories they talk about like time leaps and things like that. So
We have no idea what, like, because if he's just going the street over to see what's going on, then he should be back very shortly thereafter. It's not like a it's not a mistake in the I'm not saying like I can't believe they screwed that up. Not at all. It's more like it's interesting that they made it 3 hours after the fact or so.
yeah, that is a good point. Yeah, because I guess they've all been sitting on their car hoods with shotguns for a few hours by that point.
Well, no, they had just gotten shotgun. Within moments of having a shotgun, someone is shot and killed. And that is a perfect American allegory for sure.
Yeah.
That is like, if we didn't learn anything in the 60s from that, we didn't. Within moments they shoot that person.
And again, that's Tommy, freaking out. Their first 30 seconds of conversation once the light flash hits is relatively well considered. It just takes Tommy to start screaming at them about setting the seeds of dissent or whatever.
Well, the worst part is like he's half correct. So
Yeah.
like he's correct that something has crash landed and trying to screw them over, So his instincts are right on. What I think is interesting about this episode, you're right that it's like so well known at this point and iconic, just like the face, like the masked nurses, and you see, or like, there's so many couple of Twilight Zone episodes that you just think of immediately when you think of the show. And Maple Street is one of them. But when you watch this episode for the first time, you are also convinced that someone is an alien.
Yeah.
or you're like skeptical too. And so that goes to show our own culpability, or like we want to trust people and we want to find the answers. So like we don't know it's that they're being manipulated, or not being, or they're manipulating themselves. We are like also trying to suss out who it is,
I guess to a certain extent, like you said, people galvanize during disasters, but they flip out during a witch hunt.
That is, well, God, so you're so right. That's probably the better way to look at it. The witch hunt of it all, because they were like gonna band together and solve the problem, and Charlie and Les were gonna go together, like those are buds to some extent. And Charlie flips on a dime. The second he gets hurt, he knows, quote unquote, who it is. He knows. He doesn't know, but he's so survival of the, like he's so frightened that he was willing to save his own life and lose someone else's life. It's fascinating human study.
Yeah, I'm sort of wondering, like, who is the person we're going to identify with in this one?
You don't think? Oh, I see.
Well,
I mean, we
Les.
want to we want to identify with Les, right? We want to. We wish we did.
Right. And what is that? I'm mixing up the names a little bit. Okay, Brand is Sheriff Lobo. Okay, so he's kind of skeptical, like he's trying to keep his head level. Les is relatively convincing and level-headed till they start flipping his car on and off. So
oh, that's Les. Okay, I'm confused. So Brand is the guy that's like our main dude. Okay.
I'm someone who stares at stars a lot at night, usually walking, not standing there, but
which is weird. I'm sure it's weird. And also, what is Brand's wife doing? Like, why is she talking about his radio? Like, she loses it too. And he, like, I find it funny that he's like, honey, chill out. Come on, get with it. He just can't he doesn't like attempt to get to reason with her. It's very interesting.
But you do start thinking of, gee, what weird description would I get? He's got 8 guitars in his room and walks around in rice fields at midnight. I guess that's my thing.
I scream playing video games. My upstairs neighbor must think I'm insane, like I'm in a creative part of the country, so you can mostly infer that whoever you're living next to is probably doing something. But I'm like going, gosh darn it, F, the entire time I'm playing the game. So well into midnight. So I'm sure unnerving. Anyone would, if I lived above me, I'd be like, that lady is crazy.
I got myself in the thick of it yesterday. I was trying to wipe an old iPhone we need to send back, and it was sending me through some loop of Apple passwords and like, okay, you want to change
The
your password? Give
worst.
me your password. So
The
eventually I
worst.
started screaming obscenities at him. My wife said, "Yeah, yeah." Hannah, my daughter, was like, "What did you just say?" He didn't say anything.
You gaslit her?
No, no, my wife gaslit her.
Yeah, no, okay, but that you are colluding at this point.
Yeah, yeah. I was screaming obscene. I think I only let one like really rock when that's when I was. That's when it said, "Do you want to change your password?" Yes, and I was like, "What is your password?" I'm like, "Ah!"
The first time it's that and Microsoft are the two most frustrating, uh, and probably for the right reasons to like recover a password. It's the two most frustrating IPs out there.
Yeah, that's why I'm talking to you now. I'm still rocking a 12-year-old laptop that runs Windows 7.
I mean, if it works, it works.
That's the whole point. I actually just got a new computer and I can't be bothered. I got this one jury rigged for sound, just how I like it.
Well, yeah. Why would you? I get it. I get it. Sometimes just the convenience of how it works and how it's set up. Why would you improve upon it? That's so
Right.
funny.
When it gets warmer, it'll start getting slow, and then I'll definitely switch to a new one. But so
But
it's
yeah, you're right. So this is the first time I've had a PC because of the pandemic. I got a PC in order to play video games on Twitch because you need high. Like I was trying to do it on my MacBook and it just can't handle it. And there's also some games you can't play on Mac. But yes, during the summer days, overheating is a thing for sure. That I remember from the days of old.
yeah. But yeah, where was I getting? Oh, Lesna's weird habits. I guess that was my point of identification because
Ah,
it's kind of like 50s television. You're supposed to identify with the upstanding white bread family man, and here they're making a thing like, oh, he's got weird habits. Everyone's got weird habits, which it's true, but that's what makes people interesting, as long as the weird habit isn't something horrible.
and 9 times out of 10, we don't know until it's too late if they have a horrible habit.
Yeah, yeah, and
He
then
was
it's like,
so fine up until this point.
and there's immoral horrible habits and just disgusting ones, I guess. So
Yeah, my philosophy in life is be happy and don't hurt other people. As long as one can do that, I think I've done a pretty good job in life.
I did find it amusing when everyone is staking out in their front lawns that it's all milk and cola, and I'm like, yeah, right, 1950s television. This is beer or Scotch swilling time, Scotch and
Well,
Cokes.
because Charlie starts slurring, right? So like he is behaving belligerently a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. I guess they spiked the milk, put some
Well,
Baileys in there.
I think we are to infer that these people are drinking. He's drinking a soda bottle. He's drinking, I think we're to infer, at least he definitely layered in drunk with a suspicion.
Right. And I felt he kind of turned into like a proto Alex Jones. That was kind of fun.
That's what, so what I love about that actor in this setting, you could drop him into any TV show today and perfectly cast him. It's a really timeless. His performance is very timeless, but his um the word I'm looking for is prototype, not prototype, but like whatever that
Maybe archetype.
archetype could be dropped into any TV show, any film right now. We and that same actor would kill it. He's got a very contemporary yet 1950s thing about him. It's very I remember noting that when I watched the episode the first time.
Yeah, I sort of fell off the MCU wagon after Endgame. I was like, Endgame, that's the end, right? But I did watch the WandaVision where they kind of, like to rock these sort of archetype roles in different time periods, and I really like that.
It was delightful. Yeah, totally.
I'm one of the folks where I've heard some people say, well, it's just really weird at first, and then finally it gets itself together. Where I'm like, it was awesome at first, and then it just turned into Marvel stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it was perfect at first. Like the first, it was perfect. Anyway, everyone's entitled to their opinion. There's a thing with acting too, because that's like my main career. some people look contemporary and some people look like they're made for Downton Abbey, you know, so like you can drop them into the prairie, but you can't drop them into New York. So everyone has some people have classic looks, some people have modern looks, some people can, you know, toe the line on both. But if you know that, like, I don't really work past 1940s, because I could do 1940s, maybe 19 not 1950s, not 1960s, but I can do 70s and up. So I do the, you know, victory curls pretty well.
There we go. I was also sometimes I think like people's faces are just built for like a certain decade of their life.
I guess that's
Like,
what I mean. Like
yeah,
you can plot me into the 70s really easily, you know.
yeah. Well, I mean, also just like you know, like, oh, this person like was at their not necessarily prime, but just like they
Mm.
looked just right when they're in their 20s or in their 40s, or you know, there's I teach kids. I have like 3-year-olds. I'm like, you're destined to be a little old man. You're 3 years old, but you've got an old man face already.
Like that's an old soul, or who knows. Yeah, it is interesting, like what our exterior projects about our interior.
Um, Before I get to my more specific questions, I suppose we do have to talk about the aliens a little bit.
Okay. Uh-huh.
Uh, I just ran across the fun fact that the ship, when they're getting on the ship, I was like, we just did third from the sun, and I'm like, it looks like the same ramp, but it turns out
Mm.
that is the Forbidden Planet ship. And at the end, the shot of the saucer is the Forbidden Planet ship flipped on over, and the film is running backwards.
No way.
Yeah, so
That's really clever.
I thought I was clever because I was like third from the sun. I'm like, oh, I recognized it, but it's from somewhere else. So I'm like, I was only half clever in that case.
You had a suspicion, okay, Charlie? So I think you should give yourself a break.
Yeah, really. Um, One other thing that I was just thinking about is, you know, Japan. I live in Japan. Society's different. I don't know what they do in this kind of situation. They probably just start having tea and see what happens for a few hours. Again,
I
there was
would
no
wonder.
yeah, there was no rioting during those earthquakes or anything. So people just kind of like, well, galvanized, like you said. But there is a saying in Japan that translates to, it's kind of a horrible one for the Western mind. The nail that sticks up gets hammered down.
Oof.
So like schools, you think about, you know, Japanese schools being quite strict. And one of the reasons is like, no one's supposed to stick out, of course, not in a class clown, disruptive way, but no one is supposed to betray they're that smart either.
Wow,
Because
fascinating.
that sticks out if you are seem to be ultra smart. So, you know, even really sharp people might like try to not come across as that sharp.
Right, totally. It sounds like an agreed upon way to be in that society. That's fascinating.
Yeah, it's like kind of the unwritten social contract. So
Yeah, sure. Huh.
on the plus, that's why Japanese can have like weird interests and nobody really cares. Like people are obsessed with like trains, not steam engines, just like regular commuter trains. It's like a giant hobby,
It's
which
it's also because there's the speed train is out there too, right? Like, is that part
yeah,
of it?
the bullet train, the Shinkansen. But I'm
Yeah,
on a local commuter rail, and there's always people taking pictures of my trains. Probably because it's not the national service; it's like a local service. But
I
I'm just
see.
going to work, man.
How fascinating. I think if I can glean anything from that, the Japanese culture likes Japanese culture very much.
Yeah, that and K-pop.
Mm, mm.
That's I found many
They're not
kids.
alone. This country has been bitten by the K-pop.
We still have Tower Records here, and up until about a year ago,
Do
it was
you
still
really?
yeah, it was still great to go to. I just went one yesterday, but they've reduced their pop, rock, rap, all that to almost like an old Kmart selection, and then like this giant part of the store is like for 5 K-pop acts now, and it's kind of depressing.
Well, but that's how music evolves, right? Like, so
Yes.
when Britney Spears and Justin Timberlake show up, Tower Records, that was Nirvana and stuff like that, and Radiohead, it's gonna flip over because that's what's selling, you know?
Right. No. The sad thing here is they reduced the floor space by 80%, and 80% is now like 5 K-pop acts.
I understand. So it's not even the same size of the store.
Right. They've
Got it.
reappropriate a large part, but you know, whatever. I mean, not many of us get CDs anymore. So
That's
um,
fair. Yeah, no.
for
When I
me,
got
it's
my CDs stolen, I gave up collecting them. So
Yeah, for me, it's like, usually it's like jazz, classical, or like 70s funk or something, because that stuff's harder to find online. So,
Yeah, I'm sure like our amoeba out here has stuff like that, but I can imagine that having a very niche audience out there for sure.
but again, that's because there's a lot of, there's like a bunch of dudes in Japan, they're 60s now that are just like still super into like, 70s hard rock and the Beatles and stuff. I mean, I got a copy of Lennon's guitar here. I love Beatles myself, but you know,
I think I would think you're crazy if you didn't. I feel like anybody that doesn't like the Beatles are just contrarian to be contrarian. Um,
but the
but
kids
yeah,
don't know anymore. It's weird.
they
When
do.
I've
They do.
No, I'm talking about in Japan.
Okay, so I can't
I,
speak to that.
no, I started teaching here in 2004, and kids then still they seem to know a lot about Western music and movies, whereas my students now really don't. So Japan
Huh.
has refocused on itself in a lot of
Interesting.
ways. Yeah,
Interesting. Huh.
it's not necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. It's
No,
the thing
yeah.
that happens. So
Just interesting to me. That's interesting.
yeah, so I guess that's the one thing living here. Like people might judge each other the same way they do here because that's the bad side of human nature. But
Mm.
that all out riot at the end is I mean, it's actually pretty tame here compared to what we've seen in the past 20-30 years, but 50 even.
It's
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely no riot after the Lakers win a three-peat, but I mean like it is horrifying to think that those people just killed each other. It's horrifying.
Yeah, I guess after they've already taken one out, the rest are going out. So
Yeah, I mean
um
you're hearing gunshots left and right and someone picks up the hammer off of Pete's body. It's pretty much insinuated that these people are all going to be dead the next day.
yeah, too bad they didn't do end credit sequences these days. They could show us the next morning after the credits roll.
Where everyone like the bodies are just yeah, that would be fast. That's what I love about older TV shows too is that they have to be really economical with the shots and stuff like that. They're not doing a million takes or like they probably have like two artistic shots, but everything else is pretty normal, you know? So I really love the economy of what they decide to shoot and how they shoot it because they're using film, you know, you can't just keep the tape rolling. So they have to tell their story without showing us that the car's turning on. We hear it or whatever. I always love just learning like what was important to the director to show.
Yeah, because these shows for the time they had a decent budget, but television budgets were way below film budgets at that point in time. Now they're
But
seem
but
to be
even
almost
using
equal.
but even using film regardless, it's not like a replenishable tool. Like you can only shoot so much of that. So you have to be smart in how you decide to use it. You're right, like they could just order another reel, but that is expensive.
Yeah, well, this was a crack crew. Like they could really go in and do it like a scalpel.
I'm
Probably
sure that's true.
a lot smaller than a modern Hollywood crew. Less regulations, and in some cases you probably need the regulations because I'm guessing there's fewer stunt actor injuries these days. I'd like to think.
Sadly, no, but there's a whole expose about stuff like that. But yes, more laws are in place and more things are supposed to be better, you know,
Yeah,
because of accidents that have happened and being around a bunch of humans that are responsible for other humans. There's always going to be a problem, and there's going to be a new law. But I mean, not talk about like the thing that happened on Alec Baldwin's movie. You know what I mean? That shouldn't have happened. There were rules in place for that to not have happened. And then it was like the worst case scenario. So,
yeah, that did kind of flash my head right as I was saying. I was like, "What? Wait." So,
and there's things that we don't know about. Like there was a woman who is now, I want to say she's wheelchair bound because they changed the stunt on her that day and still it was like a motorcycle car stunt and they
I think you're talking about Back to the Future 2, where they're having the hoverboards go into the
no, but I know
courthouse.
about that
Yeah.
too.
Okay.
That woman hurt herself very badly, right?
Yes.
No, this was not very long ago, but the short version of the story is it was also raining that day. They changed the timing by like a second and it was enough to like literally destroy her career and her life.
Right.
And
So
that's
crews
the
out there, be
budget
careful.
being an issue, you know.
Right. I'll bring it back to the episode with a few questions I like to ask at the end of these things.
Great, let's
Um,
do it.
some of them seem obvious, but then I get answers that aren't obvious. So let's see where it goes. In this episode, who traveled through the Twilight Zone?
Oh, so I think I think Brandon.
Okay, so you're giving him like point into the Twilight Zone.
Like
See,
I think he's because he's this is the guy who's like the most level headed. Like, come on now, we're gonna right like the main guy essentially.
trying to bring logic to everyone and failing because well, there's no way he could succeed really.
Yeah, he couldn't. It was beyond him. But I think he's the one who was spinning out in the world. Like the world was just spinning around him.
Right. Then we got someone like Charlie though, who metamorphosizes into a drunk Alex Jones. So
Right, right.
is that going into Twilight Zone, or is that just making an arse of yourself?
I think that I would more expect a human to behave that way. So,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Yeah, that's a good
um,
question, though. It's a good question.
and then Les, he's reasonably level-headed. I mean, he could be as level-headed as Brand, but he's gets instantly accused. He's instantly on the defensive.
And he's even really calm considering.
Yeah.
Like he's way more patient with those people than he even had to be with them just immediately pointing the finger at him. So, um, it's very possible that the entire town just got dropped into the Twilight Zone. Is probably more likely, you know, um, but because you're right, Les is not such a bad guy for sure.
Yeah. So I guess you could take the next question as just Brand, or if we want to say the entire street took a voyage in, you can take it that way too. But did Brand or the people of Maple Street deserve their trip into the Twilight Zone?
Whoa, it's a good question. I don't think Brand did.
No, I mean, all these people, like they say, were just having a nice, normal American day in 1959 or whatever.
Right, right.
But then they're living their life like that, and I mean, 90% of the world was not living that nice. So, and even now, you and I are living a much nicer existence at the moment than a fair amount of other people are.
That's a very, very fair point. That you're talking about in reality, like a lot of privilege. Those people had a lot of privilege and then abused that privilege in
Right.
a sense.
Or took it for
Um,
granted.
well, yeah, yes. And it's not easy to be the person that's trying to stand up in the face of like insanity and stand up for the right thing. Even Charlie speaking up and being like, well, it could have been him, like totally um taking a stance. That's hard too, even though he's insane. Um I don't know. I don't know that anyone deserved it, but it's more like, oh, they've been plopped in this. Let's see what the experiment. Let's see what this simulation brings us.
Yeah, I guess it really isn't an experiment in this case. So
Yeah, yeah,
it's like, do the lab rats deserve it?
yeah. That's a really good way to look at it. Totally.
Although I feel like a lot of us would probably say the lab rats do not deserve it. But
No, they don't deserve it.
I've never been in a lab, so I can't. I'm just judging from my own. Like, gee, we shouldn't hurt things, but
Yeah, I'm a vegan, so it's hard to think about that stuff. Animal testing, while I understand it does help us make scientific advancements, it's also pretty brutal. So
although just to speak for the validity of art as a messenger, I first learned about animal testing in the late 80s reading the Bloom County comic strip.
Oh.
And they had a thing where I think it's Opus the Penguin goes to like save his mother from the Mary Kay Cosmetics factory or something.
So sweet.
But
I No, go ahead.
oh yeah. Just like these car trips. I'm from Atlanta, and my relatives were in Delaware, so we go on these 15-hour car trips, and I just be in the back of the car reading Bloom County or X-Men or something the entire time.
How funny. Yeah, you're right. Art does expose us to what's going on in the world because how else are we going to get all that information? It's interesting, or at least a perspective, right?
Yeah. So when you think about when you first learned about issues, sometimes when if you can pinpoint where you first heard of it, it's like, oh, that's totally weird.
Right? Or like the first time you heard a joke, it was in like, and it's been regurgitated since. It's like, oh my God, it came from that show or whatever, like an observation. then becomes your opinion or your perspective. It's fascinating how art does that.
We were just I was talking with one of my podcasting buddies who's also my coworker, but there was a kid on the floor starting to he pulled out like something sharp, like and we are like, is he going to start playing the knife game? And after he told him to put that away, yeah,
Wow.
the handy knife game, and we were like, where was that first in media? He was like, oh,
who
little
saw
pirates.
that? Wow, that's a good question.
Because we think of aliens, but there's movies in the 70s where people were doing that as well. I think it was because we saw it in Dark Star, John Carpenter's Dark Star from the early 70s. Somebody's doing the knife game in there. So we're like, where did that first show up?
It's a good trivia question, and now I need to know the answer.
Yeah. Well, a few weeks ago, we did the Four of Us Are Dying Twilight Zone episode where it's a changeling, and as the changeling expires, it shows each face he took on, and we're like, oh, there's so many things since then have done that, like Detective Pikachu and the X-Men have all kind of recreated that scene, and we're like, maybe this is the first time they did it.
That would totally track, that's what's really awesome about, at least, getting to do this podcast. And I appreciate you asking me on and getting to watch this show again, or, in order to do this, it's a very high quality storytelling vehicle. And you can see how much it's impacted our society today, that kind of quality of storytelling and imagination.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, my starting this podcast was I had gotten a Blu-ray set, and I was like, I need to watch all of these. But I don't actually watch that much video, so I'm like, I need to make myself an excuse to watch all of these, and
that's
now
smart.
we're podcasting.
That's smart. Here we are, and here we are today. That's everything starts with an idea, and then you make it happen. That's awesome.
Exactly. Sometimes when I'm going to sleep, for the future, I'll run out of Twilight Zones. I got the Ray Bradbury Theater and Tales from the Dark Side, stuff like that. The thing is, I watch them late at night, and I tend to fall asleep before the end. So I wake up the next morning, what was the twist? I just watched like 20 minutes of weirdness, and it never resolved.
I wish I could be like you. I mean, actually, maybe I don't, but I cannot fall asleep while the TV's on. So very rarely do I miss what's going on. I'm usually turning it off right before I fall asleep. So
no, I'm real bad at passing out while watching stuff.
No, I think that's good. If that's like a way to go to sleep, don't begrudge that,
Yeah, true. But my last question, I used to write like psychedelic record reviews, and I do quality, and I don't want to do the Twilight Zone for quality. I mean, even when it's bad, it's usually pretty good. So
yeah, totally.
I use my other scale, which is the tripometer. How trippy was this episode? 0 being not trippy at all, 5 being extremely trippy. I'll take decimals and invented numbers as well.
Fair. I'm gonna say 0. It's not a trippy episode.
Okay.
It's super grounded. Like the only thing is like, oh, there's aliens, but it's
they're even that is on.
Not. Yeah. But yeah, totally. This is an episode. This is the reason why it's so iconic is because take any scenario, drop people into it, no matter what's the cause of it, you can see people behaving this way. So that's not that trippy to me.
Yeah, maybe it's me coming from the dirtiest South or whatever, but I would put on the phrase that these people are tripping. So
they're tripping. That's different than this is a trip. Yeah.
Okay. Then this is the trippinometer. I was going to give it a 3 on that, but for that reason,
those people are out of their minds for sure. That's a different, like the episode itself, not tripping.
Yeah. Well, that's the whole point of the question, though. Like, what do different people consider to be trippy or not? So
sure, totally. I love that question.
So, be proud. That's the first 0 I've gotten, because I think most people are like, what's the Twilight Zone? It has to be a little bit trippy, doesn't it? But you got a good point. It's very grounded. So maybe that 0 is, informs.
In my humble opinion, it's a 0.
No, that's great. So like I said, these questions, I'm always like, are these too like obvious? And they never are. So that's why I keep using them.
Well, that's what I was going to say too. Like, it's still nice to have a format so that you can, because you're right, everyone's going to give a different answer, even though you feel like you've done this over and over again. I've never heard this. So it's exciting. You're basically giving us something to jump off of, and that's awesome.
Yeah. And I often just find like, well, of course, I've got this answer and it's obvious, isn't it? And, oh, no, it's not obvious. The guest has a different answer. So
totally.
So that's the fun about it. I guess we'll be wrapping up here today, unless you have any other major points on this episode.
I really don't think so. I think You covered some awesome things. You made me think about it too. I'm grateful that I got to rewatch this episode because I remember it very well, um, even though I watched it years and years ago. So it was kind of nice to revisit it.
Yeah. Well, I've been listening to your podcast, and I was like, oh yeah, those Orville episodes have some deep stuff in them. I'm like, I hope I can get up to bat enough for this. So,
Well, it's a 30-minute show as opposed to a 45-minute show where we got to find the messages, morals, and meanings of an Orville episode. You can also you can extrapolate things that aren't there too if you really try very hard.
and sorry, I was actually opening the plug window for you there. So, do
Oh,
you want to tell people where it's at?
yeah, sure. So I, like you mentioned at the top of the podcast, I am a co-host along with Mike Richards for Roddenberry Entertainment. We do Mission Log The Orville, and we're going episode by episode with Seth MacFarlane's The Orville. And we're leading up to the newest season that's going to drop in March. And we'll be also covering those episodes. So yeah, it's available everywhere you listen to podcasts. Roddenberry does amazing podcasts. I'm also part of their Sci-Fi 5. So I'll do like a weekly 5-minute science fiction history for this day. And there's a lot of great voiceover people doing that weekly. And then, they talk about every episode. They're doing Star Trek Prodigy. And if you are a Star Trek fan, there's going to be Picard. There's going to be Strange New Worlds. There's a whole new slew of things that Roddenberry is really excited to cover.
Yeah, for me, it's like basically I watch things I need to podcast about, and the rest of the time I'm watching Trek stuff. So
I can't blame you. I can't blame you.
Yeah, or something completely bizarre on YouTube, but
we all fall down that rabbit hole for sure.
Yeah, my recent addiction there has been the Metal Ball Studios thing where they'll just show like the size of like cities or fictional spaceships and put them all next to each other. So
it's so cool when you kind of get the idea of scale with that stuff.
It's like, wow, the Enterprise D really is that much bigger than the old school Enterprise.
I'm usually amazed that like those videos are like 20 minutes long. It's wild.
Yeah, that's been my most recent rabbit hole, the size of fictional things.
Very
and
cool.
Some real things as well.
Very cool.
As for this podcast, it's Time Enough Podcast. It's Time Enough Pod on Twitter and Facebook. I finally, after a month, ended up on Apple Podcast. But if you're listening to this, I guess you know where it is. But I found you can't search Time Enough Podcast in Apple. You have to search my name, which is Matt Comegys, Comegeys. Comegeys, yes.
Sounds like you gotta get a hold of something or look at your feed for some reason.
Maybe I just need to get some more listeners. So
or that too.
Yeah. So yeah, share with your friends. We're under a Patreon umbrella of Podcastius, where there are other podcasts, including the sci-fi one I do with my friend Luke, Matt and Luke Sci-Fi Sanctuary, different sci-fi film every week. He does some on Pokemon and Monster Hunter for the gamers that may have their ears out. So
my ears just perked up.
yeah, that's Luke loves Pokemon, so he covers a different character every week. And Monster Hunter is him and a couple of guys from Scotland, I guess, yelling obscenities at each other, which
makes a lot of sense. Gaming brings out the best in us.
Yeah. Well, I don't play Monster Hunter, so I don't listen to that one. But then he's like, "Oh, there's a new outtake episode. You have to listen to that because we don't even talk about Monster Hunter and that." So
it's a special ep.
Then it's just absurdities. That's right.
I love it. Well, Matthew, thank you so much for having me. This was delightful.
Thank you for joining. I guess we both need to get out on our front porches now and to see what's up with the neighbors.
Aliens.
I am an alien. Technically.
Yeah, we all are a little bit.
Oh no, I'm not a citizen in Japan.
Well, that I understand
I'm an alien.
Too.
I have an alien card.
But I'm an actual alien, so better you know that now.
Oh, right. No, I have a card that says alien card, so that's kind of cool.
Wow, very cool.